about flying right now. But I've got a little bit of a wind issue. Hey, this is Dad Random. Are you ready to launch your new DJI FPV drone? Well, I got 10 tips right now that could possibly save you a whole lot of money and possibly a few scratches. Stay tuned. Dad Random, ready to launch. Manual and general flying instructions for the DJI FPV quadcopter. Yes, all right. Stay tuned. Dad Random, ready to launch. Tip number 1. Fly in good weather. Guys, wind can kick your butt. And with this little aerodynamic fat boy, wind makes a huge difference. So be careful, especially when you're in winds of over 15 miles an hour. This little bad boy's little props have a really tough time digging in. So check your conditions. Don't fly when it's scrappy and you won't crash. DJI FPV flight tip number 2 for the DJI FPV drone. When you're taking off first in manual, make sure your quad is either flying in a not a very windy environment, especially if you're taking off in manual. Make sure your wind is coming towards you. If it's behind you, this little bad boy is going to struggle. So take off into the wind, give it full throttle, try to keep your thumb off the yaw stick. Just get it in the air. Once it's in the air, slowly yaw forward. Make sure it's clear of you and you're going to take off just fine. Be careful, because this thing, if it basically has the right conditions, will pop, and it'll pop fast. But in a heavy wind, it won't. So be careful and take off into the wind. Yes. DJI flight tip number 3. Know your controller. Know where your mode button is. Know where your pause button is. And of course, know where your start and stop button is, because that's going to save your butt. And you don't have to know them just by sight. You need to know them with your goggles on. So get your goggles on, close your eyes, start feeling around. Find manual, sport mode, normal mode, pause, start and stop. Okay? You got to know that, or don't fly manual. Later. Bye. This is Dad Random, DJI FPV tech tip number 4. Wear a lanyard. This lanyard is your lifeline between you and your controller. It allows you a nice steady thumb or pinch to the gimbals, and it keeps it nice and safe and steady. It protects you and your quad. It allows for precise movements, and it keeps your antenna stable. Guys, this lanyard is an absolute must if you're an FPV pilot. So for number 4, find a lanyard. Find a cool one, but find one. DJI FPV tip number 5. Nice sweeping turns. Make your quad sweep. Use all the space of the area that you're flying in. Don't cut your turns off until you're ready to turn tight. Get them nice and big and sweeping. This thing really can't handle really abrupt turns without doing a lot of washing movements, meaning it goes way past where you wanted it to go. So nice, smooth, sweeping turns, and then eventually add a dive into it. So you're diving down and coming back. Those are going to be really beautiful and cinematic. Remember, this is a cinematic drone. This is not a freestyle drone. Yeah, you can fly freestyle with it, but you'll pay the price if you don't know what to do. Avoid becoming basically inverted. Yeah, you can do a roll or two when you're ready, but just keep it cinematic. Sweep and turn, and your flights are going to look great. Your video is going to be amazing, and this thing won't be broke, and you won't go down $1,200 down the drain. So, fly safe, fly smooth. Later. FPV skill number 6. Practice starting and stopping. Remember, use your pause switch and use your in-flight manual mode. Learn how to do that. Learn how to transition from normal mode, from sport mode into manual mode. There's a lot of little tips and tricks that you're going to get involved in. You're going to need to know. You're going to need to know the stick issues that basically are plaguing a lot of flyers right now. The big thing is transition. So transitional modes. What does each mode do? And of course, how are you going to get the best footage from each of those different modes? So practice, practice, practice. Know your switches, know what each mode can give you and bring you when you're trying to get the best video possible. All right, later. FPV tips and tricks. Number 7, gimbal angle. The more you angle your gimbal up, the faster your quad's going to want to go. Your eyes naturally want to find the horizon. So if the gimbal is at the horizon, you can see how it tilts the quad. Now, the more the quad becomes an X, the faster it goes. Slower, faster. So when you adjust to manual, start at about 15 degrees, maybe 10 degrees, and start working it up. And every time you go into manual mode, it's going to go to that same degree. Now, if it's windier, you're going to have to add a little bit more gusto to your flight characteristics for that day. So on a calmer day, you can bring your gimbal down. Remember, this is a cinematic drone. It's not a freestyle drone. Obviously, there's people that can freestyle this thing, but they don't like it because it's not good at it. So use your gimbal settings, of course, on your controller, and learn to control your speed. Tip number 8. I'm actually repeating this tip because some of you guys didn't listen to it earlier. No freestyle, guys, until you can control this straight and level. If you can keep this from hitting things like water towers and trees, which I haven't mastered yet, don't do it, because this thing will break and it's going to cost you a whole lot of money that day, and it ain't going to be a good day. Kind of like the day I ripped my 2 front props off and I felt really stupid because I knew that what I was doing was stupid. So no freestyle until you've mastered your turns. Get really competent with your turns. I'm talking the tightest turns you can turn and know where this thing's going to drift. All right? So please do not try to show off to your friends. No macho. Okay, that's in 107, by the way, until you've mastered the basics. All right? You promise? Tip number 8. Hey, we're getting down to tip number 9. Tip number 9 is very simple. It just asks you, you see all the brains in here? If I were to take off this little plastic helmet, there's all kinds of electronic circuitry in here. It's pretty darn smart. So use its brains. Use your brain and its brains to make your flying much easier. Use the automated functions, especially for landing. Don't freaking land this thing by yourself, okay? Let the computer do it. Find a place to land, drop it on there. If you're competent with a hand landing, Put your hand under the sensor just like you've done with other Mavics. Let it come down into your hand. Grasp your quad right here. Keep it level until the engine turns off, till the motors turn off. Make sure you keep that downward angle on the gimbal so it'll shut the motors down. Now it'll get excited and it'll maybe suffer a little bit, but you can also flip it. But remember, this is a freestyle quad, and I can't imagine that it would do that, but I've never tried it. But just spin the motors down, use the controller, okay? And don't even do that. You don't have to. Go back to step one. Use its brain. Let it land on something. Just find a place that's flat and pull the gimbal down. Let it land. Automated features. They're there for a reason. Use them. Like normal mode, sport mode. You don't have to use manual mode, guys. Nobody said you had to. At random. Tip number 9. Finally, the last item on our list for FPV Top 10 things you need to think about. Now, this one's so long that I'm actually going to read it off a piece of paper. It's also kind of philosophical, okay? Here we go. Have fun and fly within your skill level. Don't try to impress people by doing things you will regret later, like flying too close to objects, flying too low, or becoming disoriented by excessive aerobatics. Don't let others influence you. Try things at your skill level. Don't do things you're not comfortable with. There are less expensive quadcopters out there that are more nimble and more adapt to those things. I suggest you try one of those, not a fat, chubby quad like this one, which is good for one really good thing, taking really great pictures. So, that being said, thank you for listening to my top 10. I hope you learned something. And of course, we've got more to come, because when I am learning, you're learning. And everything I screw up, you're going to hear about later. Thank you. Dad Random. Top 10 things you should think about when you're flying FPV with the DJI system. When you're flying FPV with the DJI system. I'm just going to say that 5 times because I screwed it up and I ain't retaking this. Later. Bye.